I saw on social media someone talking about what they felt were the most influential indie games released, and it felt like a really interesting thought experiment. So for today, I'm going to share my list of 5 and see if I can finally say the word influential without completely slurring my speech in the process. For this list, I'm putting several considerations or conditions on it. The first one is we're going to be focusing specifically on the decade of the 2010s. So, Minecraft, Vampire Survivors, Balatro is not going to be mentioned here. Another point is that I'm focusing on games that you can actually see its influence to the point that the market was different before its release and the market changed after. Because there are a lot of mega successful games that did so damn well, but they didn't necessarily redefine the genre. They basically kind of collapsed in on itself to become a market unto itself. It's the difference between the success of something like Undertale versus Minecraft. Undertale is an amazing game. It is a pop culture relevant title to this day. But it didn't transform the RPG genre. It hasn't really changed or affected how RPG designs are going forward. It's very much a one-off. Conversely, we look at something like Minecraft. Minecraft is, again, a genre-defining title. We can see its DNA in every single crafting-based game, even some of the survival titles. Anywhere where you're going to punch a tree or have to collect wood as your first resource, we can trace back to Minecraft and its success. It's also why it's not being mentioned on this list, because that's an easy gimme. Well, let's get to my 5 picks and we'll see how many torches, pitchforks, and rioters line up outside my house after it's done. For my first pick, we're going with a game that very much redefined a genre whether you like it or not, and that is the roguelike genre. Depending upon who you are right now watching this, a few of you just probably went, ugh, when you heard the term roguelike. There have been lots of them over the years. Action, turn-based, traditional, deck building, engine building, survival building, lots of building and likes that have come out. And we can really trace it back to the first commercial release success, and that goes to The Binding of Isaac, the second mega successful game from Ed McMillan. What The Binding of Isaac did was it proved to people beyond a shadow of a doubt that you can take the elements of a traditional roguelike. Variety of builds and items that can show up, the procedurally generated world, the sheer hilarity, insanity, and just chaotic nature of its design, and apply it to an action game or a top-down game. And you cannot deny the influence of that success. We can trace it to just about every mega successful example that has come out since. Well, The Binding of Isaac, we may not have gotten games like FTL, Slay the Spire, Balatro, even stuff like Vampire Survivors. The entire nature of building your game around runs and having an unlock or a meta progression, we can take that back to The Binding of Isaac. And without it, so many indie games would either not exist or not be anywhere near as successful. And again, while The Binding of Isaac has done amazingly well, some of those games that I mentioned have proven that there are not only more examples of roguelikes, but more sub-genres of roguelikes and roguelites, with the aforementioned deck building and engine building and bullet heavens and who knows what is coming next. But you cannot deny that so many of the roguelikes and roguelites would not have existed without The Binding of Isaac, proving that you can use replayability and variance to greatly extend the livelihood of a game in a genre. That just having that one more run or that one more unlock can do so much to keep someone coming back for more, and why it makes it for this list. My next 2 picks surprisingly go together despite being completely different genres and completely different foundations. The first one goes to a game that I am not a huge fan of, but to deny its influence over the market would be very stupid. And that goes to Five Nights at Freddy's. You're not going to find too much footage of it here because I think we've only played for maybe like a sum total of 20 minutes on the stream. But Five Nights at Freddy's is the game that really did revitalize horror. Now, whether you like it or not is besides the point, but no one can deny how much the horror genre owes itself to Five Nights at Freddy's success. It's also the game that led to the rise of YouTubers and streamers playing horror games. So for those of you who love watching your favorite creator scream on the top of their lungs, you can thank FNAF for that. But talking about how much a game could influence a genre or a market, Five Nights at Freddy's is up there. Without it, we would have never gotten the likes of Outlast. Who knows if Puppet Combo will even be as popular if people weren't already covering horror games with FNAF. As another point, if the horror genre never kind of blew up again, there's a good chance we would not have gotten Resident Evil 7 and kind of Capcom's like Renaissance period or the revival they've had over the last few years. Same goes for getting Silent Hill F and seeing more of those games. FNAF, again, is not a game whose design is super complicated, highly advanced. It is a very simple game when you look behind the nuts and bolts of it. But what it did was package and present horror in a new way. It proved once and for all that you don't need super highly fidelity graphics and billions of dollars to terrify someone. And with so many more horror games that we've seen, from the short form to the medium form, to Japanese based, to job based, and mascots, lots and lots of mascots. Even though FNAF is still very popular, it has once again given birth to so many different new franchises and takes. And horror in of itself definitely owes some sense of gratitude to FNAF, proving people still like to get a jump scare or two when they play a game. For my next pick, it goes for a game that has Night in the title, and it's not going to be Hollow. It goes to Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight and FNAF both represent kind of the popularity of genres that were once popular in AAA but went by the wayside. Of course, there were horror games before and after FNAF, just as there were platformers before and after Shovel Knight. However, both games proved that you can still elevate and make an amazing example of this genre without needing Nintendo bucks or Capcom dollars to do so. And with Shovel Knight itself, it kind of signified to people that despite the fact that 3D was here to stay, 2D is not irrelevant. There's a lot of people who find that 2D games are considered lesser or not as amazing or interesting to design. You walk left, you walk right, you jump. That's all you need is a platformer. While a few of you platformer designers right now are having heart attacks as I said that. And while there are some people who still think that indie game just means 2D platformer, Shovel Knight was a game that proved that 2D still works, it still had plenty of legs to it, and you could still design a game to capture that market. And in terms of its influence, and with Shovel Knight we can see its influence in just the sheer amount of 2D games being released, that once again show that just because Nintendo was capitalizing on 3D platforming and no AAA studio was making 2D platformers, people still wanted to play them. And without it, there's a good chance we would not have gotten the likes of Dead Cells, Hollow Knight, the multitude of 2D puzzle platformers and action platformers, and just 2D in of itself. And with Shovel Knight's success, it really did once again open up this door to modern retro design, that you can make a game that looks like a NES or a SNES or even an Atari game. And as long as it's still amazing to play and still is good in the player's hands, people will enjoy those pixels and chiptunes and bits just as they would the AAA or 3D title. And as someone who loves their running, jumping, wall jumping, and of course pogo jumping, I am a huge fan of it. And as the classic game of Bangayo said many years ago, 2D will never die, and Shovel Knight is proof of it. At the start of this video, I mentioned again about the difference between a game being so successful that it spawned a market and a genre or revitalized it, and a game that was just kind of it, and no one has really done anything new or different or successful with it. And my next pick is clearly an example of the former. Not only did it help influence one genre, it also brought a new or redefined how games could be marketed and pitched. And it of course goes to that little known game, Stardew Valley. I don't need to spend any time describing what Stardew Valley is. If you're watching this video, you probably know it, played it, and probably watch a few people do all manner of crazy runs and modded plays of it. Stardew Valley, on the surface level, is the game that redefined and popularized the farming genre. Farming sim, slice of life, however you want to slice it. And there have been lots, and lots, and lots of farming games released. You got your cozy farming, your serious farming, your horror monsters are going to kill you unless you properly water your zucchini farming, bullet hell farming, bullet headed farming. Just as there are as many roguelikes and roguelites as there are stars in the sky, there's as many farming games with fishing mini games and dating and so on. And once again, Stardew Valley became the blueprint for the farming genre, and that in of itself would make it onto this list. But it also did something else. It became the poster child for the entire cozy and wholesome movement. The idea that you can have this amazing game that you don't need to focus on combat. Just an incredibly addictive and appealing title that's about farming, fishing, dating, talking to people. The idea that you can have a success that doesn't involve the words Call of Duty or Madden or any of the other over-the-top games. And it has again become this poster child for being able to appeal to a larger market. And who knows, if Stardew Valley wasn't released, we would have gotten the same kind of push or appeal of wholesome and cozy titles. We've played a lot of them here. And Stardew Valley's success, and from a design standpoint, shows just how well you can have that kind of slice of life and making appealing to play one day at a time, one season at a time, 1 year at a time. And it is also very challenging to get that to be appealing, because we've also played a lot of these titles that it just doesn't really work all that well. And without Stardew Valley, again, it's hard to say just where the market would be and even just where the consumer base would be. Would we have gotten another game to kind of become the banner for cozy titles? I really don't know. But it definitely makes it onto this list and is a very easy example. The FPS genre is one that showed no signs of anywhere being close to death in the 2010s. You had the success of stuff like Doom 2016, the multitude of multiplayer-based shooters, live service shooters, and again, this was a genre that everyone knew it, loved it, hated it, but they still consumed it. However, in terms of not only proving that the old school ways were still popular, but that you could do a lot with those older examples, my final pick goes to Dusk. Dusk, of course, is the mega successful game from David Zeminski. And what we have here is just the peak of the boomer shoot, boom shoot, run and gun shoot, however you want to define it, FPS, taking us back to the days of Doom. where we don't reload, we just hold all of our weapons, we run like we're on rocket skates, and we kill lots of enemies. And yes, there have been many FPSs like Dusk. There have been plenty of them after. But what Dusk did was that this was the most polished retail release example, and proved to people several things. First, is that old school graphics can still pop and be amazing. Again, we have seen developers going back to the likes of early 3D. We went from the era of everyone trying to make their game look like a SNES game to everyone making their game look like an early 94 PlayStation 1 title. It showed that while you can still do super realistic, super highly tech and military shooters, people were still itching for the days of, again, running, jumping, and circle strafing like a fool to fight monsters. It also, in a way, showed that there was a market for kind of the whole rise of GZ Doom, or I think it's now called UZ Doom. That just because Doom is a very old game and that this engine's been around for so long, you can still do amazing things with it. And without Dusk, who knows if we would have gotten so many recent amazing examples of old school shooters. From the likes of someone like Mouse PI, Sulaco, Ultra Kill. That's actually a really good point. Dusk was the first huge success for New Blood Interactive. And we don't know how that studio would be if it wasn't for Dusk. We'd still have Dave Oshry making weird posts on social media. Imagine a world without that. But Dusk's influence on indie games, on the entire shooter genre, even on modding and fan-made games, cannot be understated. And we've also seen this kind of legitimizing around full conversion mods being turned into release games, built off of GZ or now UZ Doom. We played stuff like Vomitorium, again Sulaco being built off of GZ Doom, Turbo Overkill, and many more of these titles. And a lot of them I don't think would have either had the same level of success or even would have been started being developed if it wasn't for Dusk showing that there is still life in those old booming and shooting. So that does it for my top 5. So why wait for the rioters to breach my door? What are your 5 favorite indie games that influence things the most? Let me know down below. With that, as long as I'm not taken out and being with sticks and the torches, we'll be back with another design video and talk coming real soon. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and you're interested in more in my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.